Comrades and friends, welcome to the program Global Weekly News, serial number 93, going to year 100 after 7 weeks. First, let us go to Brazil. In 2023 December, a tax reform proposed by the Brazilian government was approved. The reform includes an important provision, the introduction of a selective tax on products that are bad for health and the environment, discouraging their consumption. The details of the implementation of this provision have yet to be defined, and it remains to be specified which products will be taxed, and the list is to be defined in a complementary law regulating the new tax. Ultra processed foods, UPF, are one of the main product categories targeted by the future tax. The industry that produces them is already acting behind the scenes, fighting against the inclusion of ultra-processed foods in the legislation. Ultimately, the Ministry of Finance, which is responsible for formulating the bill, and the National Congress, which will decide on its approval. Last week, an initiative composed of researchers, activists, and veterans in the areas of health and food safety launched the Manifesto for a Healthy Tax Reform, arguing that ultra-processed products should be the target of selective taxation alongside cigarettes and alcoholic beverages. 57,000 deaths a year are attributed to the consumption of ultra-processed foods, and yet these products still receive tax incentives. Once the Sweet Poison campaign, the campaign name is Sweet Poison. The campaign supports the taxation of foods such as sausages, snacks, soft drinks, and stuffed cookies. Producers of unhealthy products use various maneuvers to encourage mass sales. One of the tactics is to buy positive scientific coverage with a few $1 million and a few complicit researchers, that is, those researchers who are supporting them. It is possible to misleadingly spread the word. For example, the alcohol is good for the heart, and ultra-processed foods are a solution to the problem of hunger. Comrades, next also we are in Brazil. There is a movement on April 1st. No amnesty to plotters, Brazil. April 1st, youth activists from Youth Uprising organized protests in front of homes and committees of far-right politicians. The targets they chose are currently being investigated for their involvement in 2023 January 8 coup acts in Brasilia, capital of Brazil. The protests are also taking place amidst a federal police investigation into former President Jair Bolsonaro and senior military figures. The investigation centers on their efforts to retain power through a military coup despite electoral loss. Activists of the Youth Uprising drew the connection between the attempted coup on January 8, 2023 and 1st April 1964. They emphasized that while there was amnesty for those who participated in 1964 coup and military dictatorship, in order to guarantee no repetition, there should be no amnesty for the financiers and bankers who attempted coup on January 8. In 1964, with support of United States, Brazilian armed forces organized a coup against the then President João Goulart. The dictatorship lasted for approximately 21 years until 1985 and marked one of the darkest periods in Brazil's history. As per Brazil's National Truth Commission, a total of 434 people were killed in forcibly disappeared during the military dictatorship. The regime employed arbitrary arrests, detention without charge or trial, and widely used torture, which included castration and rape against its opponents. This is the military regime between 64 and 85. Comrades, Israel continues to attack. Now it has attacked even foreign aid workers. Israel's attacks on foreign aid workers. Global Food Charity, the World Central Kitchen, WCK, World Central Kitchen, is operating more than 60 kitchens in central and southern Gaza, cooking thousands of meals a day. The deadly Israeli attack struck vehicles belonging to the World Central Kitchen and killed 7 foreign aid workers despite displaying clear labels on the vehicle. The assassinated aid workers included nationals from Palestine, Australia, Poland, United Kingdom and a dual US-Canada citizen. Global reactions and condemnation to the killings was swift and massive. The Israeli attack reportedly took place in the city of Deir al-Balah when the workers, part of a convoy full of aid, were leaving a warehouse. They had just delivered more than 100 tons of aid. Israel has so far expressed regret for the killings and has said it is investigating the incident. The founder of the World Central Kitchen, WCK, a US-based food charity, Jose Anders, in a statement said that he was heartbroken and grieving for the families and friends of our whole World Central Kitchen family, adding that the Israeli government needs to stop this indiscriminate killing and stop using food as a weapon. World Food Programme, World Health Organization, UNICEF, as well as the European Commission, etc., condemned the killings. As a consequence of the attack, World Central Kitchen also announced that it puts on hold operations immediately in the region. International humanitarian groups consider to suspend the operations. Such a collective decision by aid groups, if implemented, would leave millions of Palestinians in Gaza completely abandoned. Cyprus has said that aid ships carrying 240 tons of aid for Gaza have now turned back and are returning to Cyprus, as Cyprus announced that it will review its security protocols. Meanwhile, Israeli forces have killed at least 71 Palestinians and injured 102 others in the last 24 hours of the genocide. The total death toll in Gaza has gone up to at least 32,916 Palestinians killed, along with 75,494 Palestinians injured. Israel is continuing its war on Hamas uninterrupted for 180 days. Comrades, Israel is bombing neighboring countries also. Israeli bombing in Syria. On 1st April, Israel launched an airstrike against the Iranian consulate in the Syrian capital of Damascus. The bombing also impacted neighboring buildings. Among the 6 confirmed dead is Mohammad Reza Zagadi, a senior Israeli commander, as well as his deputy Mohammad Hadi Haji Regimi. United Arab Emirates condemned the targeting of the Iranian embassy in Damascus. Since Israel started its genocidal war in Gaza, Israel is targeting Palestine solidarity movements in neighboring countries. Israel has been attacking Hezbollah bases in South Lebanon. Israel has also carried out several attacks against civilian and military targets in Syria in coordination with the US. Iran's ambassador to Damascus said that we will give a decisive response to this action. Comments next. Pressure grows inside Israel for a hostage deal. After almost 6 months of war in Gaza, wherein Israeli forces have killed close to 33,000 Palestinians and wounded over 75,000, thousands of Israeli citizens took to the streets of Tel Aviv on 31st March to demand a ceasefire and a hostage deal. On 1st April, similar protests in Jerusalem were held in front of Israel's Ministry of Defense. These protests are indicative of growing popular anger against the Netanyahu government, which is considered as the most extremist in the history of Israel. Protesters shouted slogans against Netanyahu, blaming him for dragging the war in order to avoid elections in the country and stay in power. They demanded his immediate resignation, with some even calling him, instead of Prime Minister, Crime Minister. Protesters asked the government to send its delegates to Qatar to finalize the hostage deal, blaming Netanyahu for having hampered these deals with Hamas. Israeli security forces attacked the protesters with tear gas and water cannons and even arrested some of them in order to prevent them from erecting tents outside the Israeli parliament building, where they planned to put stay for 4 days. Opposition leaders addressed the protesters. Some protesters also believe that the resignation of Benjamin Netanyahu would expedite the hostage deal. However, Netanyahu remained defiant. In a televised press conference on 31st March, Netanyahu called all the international criticism of Israel's war on Gaza as a result of a combination of ignorance and anti-Semitism. The Netanyahu government has been refusing to stop the war despite UN Security Council resolution on ceasefire. Israeli delegations have left the ceasefire talks in Egypt and Doha multiple times in the last few weeks, with Netanyahu often claiming that the Palestinian demand for a permanent ceasefire is unrealistic. Netanyahu repeated that Israeli forces will move into Rafah in a ground offensive zone. United Nations humanitarian organizations and United States have opposed any grand offensive to Rafah, where more than half of Gaza's total population of 23 lakhs is now taking shelter. Netanyahu also rejected the calls for early elections, claiming that would paralyze the country amidst the war. The protests, to some extent, are the revival of the protests in the first half of 2023, which were organized to oppose the so-called judicial reform introduced by Netanyahu government. These protests were suspended after the beginning of the war in Gaza. Next, Israel destroys Al-Shifa hospital. Comrades and friends, Al-Shifa hospital was built in Gaza with the intention of being a house of healing, yet it has turned out into a house of death following the attacks of the Israeli occupying forces. What was done to Al-Shifa stands as a massive symbol of the heartless, cynical Israel politics of colonial occupation, with the goal of eliminating the Palestinian people, their social institutions and their lives. Close to 400 health workers have been killed and hundreds more arrested since October 7. Many health workers were fleeing with dirty clothes. Civilians gave them new clothes. In parallel to the physical violence to which the Israeli occupying forces subjected people at Al-Shifa, health workers and patients alike, the siege also worsened the nutrition and sanitation status for thousands of people. At one point, health workers were forced to move admitted patients to a room without access to food and toilet. The patients were forced to share a single bottle of water among 15 of them, according to the World Health Organization. Famine has already begun in Gaza. Israeli war on Gaza has clearly been a war on children. Between 4,000 to 5,000 more children are now living with disabilities caused by Israeli attacks. Increasing number of babies born with very low birth weight, with many of them dying as a result, can be seen. Mothers are affected by anemia. Next, comrades, Palestine Land Day. Palestinians were killed in 1976, March 30, while defending their land. For those who think this all started on October 7, this is a reminder. This struggle for land is decades in the making. People's Forum Director Manolo de los Santos mobilized 30,000 people and marched in the streets of New York City on March 30 on Palestine Land Day. Millions of people mobilized around the world on March 30 to mark the Land Day. In the United States alone, actions took place in over 40 cities across the country. US has been providing unwavering support to Israel, including weapons. Land has always been at the heart of the Palestinian struggle for liberation. Today, the construction of illegal Israeli settlements continues to strip away the land allegedly allocated for the Palestinian people. At least 7 lakh Israelis live in illegal colonial settlements and outposts across the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. Israeli officials have called for the creation of even more settlements. A participant in Algeria's struggle against French colonialism wrote, "For a colonized people, the most essential value, because the most concrete, is first and foremost the land, which will bring them bread and above all dignity." The peasants of Tanzania have repeatedly reminded us that land is life. In Brazil, the landless rural workers movement carried out actions in solidarity with Palestine, where members planted trees in the Free Palestine forest. In Ramallah of Palestine, a demonstration took place on Land Day. In Jordan, Land Day marked the 7th day of protest outside the Israeli embassy in Amman. Security forces arrested dozens of protesters who demanded implementation of UN Security Council resolution on ceasefire. Lastly, comrade, we are going to Argentina. Argentine president's arrogance. In an interview with CNN, the Argentine's rightist president Javier Milei called Gustavo Petro, the Colombian president, as a terrorist assassin. Mexico President Lopez Obrador ignorant and declared that Israel was not committing any excesses in Gaza. In response to his explosive comments, Colombia's foreign ministry announced the expulsion of Argentinian diplomats from its embassy in Colombia. This is not the first time that Javier Milei offends the Colombian head of state, affecting the historical relationship of brotherhood between Colombia and Argentina. The foreign minister's statement says, when asked what he thought about the Colombian president in January, Javier Milei told right-wing Colombian American journalists that he is a communist assassin that is sinking Colombia. Meanwhile, former Argentine President Alberto Fernandez also condemned the statement by his successor Javier Milei. Gustavo Petro, Colombian president, responded to Milei's comments. I believe that Javier Milei seeks to destroy or at least to postpone the project of Latin American integration. Milei's promise to repeat the neoliberal system of 30 years ago may be a failure foretold. Though BRICS Forum was ready to accommodate Argentina with BRICS Forum, Argentina refused to join the bloc. The Mexican head of state responded, Javier Milei stated that I am ignorant because I called him a conservative fascist. I still do not understand how the Argentines, being so intelligent, voted Milei to power. Lal Salam, comrades. Thank you. See you next week.